Now, as we begin to count down to May 29, where it will be exactly 1 year since President Bola Tinubu took office, let's take a look at some of his initiatives in 1 year. There you have some of them. I think we have about 21, but we're going to deal with about 10 if time allows us. And then we can see a series of initiatives from revolutionizing Nigeria's infrastructure sector through PPP to the tolls for all users, which just started, the ban on sand dredging, 4-week deadline for reviewing visa policy to attract more tourists into the country, approval and installation of training of operators in the disabled aircraft, the SPV that was just announced a couple of days ago, SPV for fiber optic cable, about 90,000 kilometers and all of that. So we'll see expectations placed side by side with the impact so far. And we're going to be having this conversation with the lead partner at Cardinal Professional Services, Mr. Emmanuel Onasami. Mr. Onasami, good afternoon, and thank you for your time.
It's so good seeing you this afternoon again. How are you today?
Good to see you too. So, I mean, if we're to go through all of them, I'm sure we don't have enough time for that. But, I mean, let's look at some very outstanding, interesting ones, like the PPP for infrastructure. I do not think it's President Tinubu who started it. I think it started in the last administration, especially the tax for credit for infrastructural development. Have we had a lot of activity in that area in this administration 1 year into it?
Okay, thank you very much. If you follow the trend of governance, PPP becomes attractive, especially when government is struggling to raise the kind of revenue that is needed for development. And if you look at the circumstance Nigeria as a government has found themselves from a revenue perspective, you understand that the government, cannot really fund all the infrastructural development or activities that is needed to stimulate the economic activity for recovery. So look at the example of Oyo State government, even at the subnational level, where they had to partner Shell, in raising $100 million for that gas initiative. So what the government is really saying is that, yes, we understand the urgency, to re-stimulate the economy and move towards recovery. But if we don't have all the needed fund, to do that, then we have to go the way of PPP. We've seen a number of PPP projects in the past, but I think the government is sounding a recommitment, to unlock, PPP initiative in this region, particularly for infrastructure development.
Yeah, but do we have some specifics of PPP in the last 1 year?
Yes, so like I mentioned, Oyo State just got into one with Shell, and even from the subnational level, we've seen a lot of PPP arrangements in the power sector, where government has to partner with private sector in shoring up the power generation for some specific economic activity or some specific zones. Also, we've seen PPP arrangements, with some key infrastructure development, and you've seen a lot of incentives that mirrors, government partnering also with the private sector, like the roads incentive scheme, where private sector take up road development for tax, tax recovery in the future. Those are variants of PPP that government has also, entered into in order to unlock development in the face of lack of revenue. So there are pockets of PPP, around. We may not be able to itemize them in details, but like I've said, the government has seen the renewed commitment to say that we need the private sector to really get to the recovery level that the economy needs at the moment.
Yeah, well, we hope to see more PPP that'll be more inclusive, because even for the infrastructure one, I mean, people have said, it's only the very big companies like the Dangotes that seem to be participating. Perhaps if the requirements are lowered, it will allow more people get into that space. But another interesting one happened this week, where out of the Federal Executive Council meeting, tolls at the airports, and now for all users, no more elites and no more demarcation. But I mean, my question with that is, how are we going to see the implementation? Who is going to regulate it? Who is going to follow up on that, knowing, you know, some of the sentiments around how things are done in this country? Who is going to ensure that, yes, the president's convoy has 10 cars, and those 10 cars pay, nobody's afraid to stop the car to say, you haven't paid for it. You know, saying it is one thing, but actually implementing it is another kettle of fish.
Okay, just like, you know, we've always had in the past, I think we have beautiful policies, we have beautiful laws. And, you know, this is one of the things that government is putting on the table to communicate very strongly, that every revenue that can be gathered or garnered, you know, this period is needed for the purpose of economic recovery. And that's why some of the initiatives out of the 21 initiatives are focused on, you know, increasing revenue. You know, having said that, everybody will now pay. So, you know, it is the commitment to seeing to that is implemented, just like you have highlighted, is also very, very important. There are ways that this can actually be done in order to, you know, minimize bureaucracy or our culture of human worship that may want to, you know, limit the implementation. Technology is a way to go. If at all the Ministry of Aviation is interested in seeing to it that those tools are collected without fail. So technology, e-tax, deploying e-tax that are, you know, funded in advance, you know, and everybody has to access through those e-tax platforms. I think those technology are already in place. And if the government is serious about implementing this, you know, you don't necessarily have to go the route of cash collection. Technology is a way to go in implementing this seamlessly.
Yeah, if we really want to do that. I think another interesting one, Mr. Onasami, is the visa policy to facilitate access of more tourists and all of that. But I don't know if we have our eyes on tourism in this country. People coming into the country come to take advantage of loopholes, mostly, not all the time. For business, we've seen illegal mining and all of that. But when it comes to tourism and the issue of visa, we have a lot of undocumented individuals in this country, especially those in the neighboring countries. So I don't know what's going to be different about this, actually.
Okay, you know, one of the things that actually promotes illegality can actually be the complexity involved in the process. You understand? You know, if your process is a bit difficult to crack, you know, people then begin to look for alternative of getting access into the environment. Looking at it from the perspective of neighboring countries, I think we have the ECOWAS framework that allows people into Nigeria so far they can present that they're a member of the ECOWAS state, and I believe that's still very much in place. But I think the perspective that the government is actually looking at this initiative from is for promoting additional foreign direct investment into the economy. You know, one of the things that potential investors wants to see is ease of access into your jurisdiction, and if there's a lot of bureaucracy in getting visa to come into your country, that can potentially hinder the free flow of FDI that we, you know, desperately need in time like this. So I think from the tourism perspective, you know, we may not be able to get much if we don't revamp our tourist facilities and monuments that we have, you know. But when it comes to business and trade, you know, I think the visa policy will be able to encourage more business activities and get FDIs. But from the tourism perspective, there is more to do from the perspective of the government to revamp our tourist infrastructure and communicate them to the world for attraction.
I really wish that the government will make public the targets and then the timelines, you know, for this, because when we just leave it open and say, oh, there's going to be a review of the visa policy for the country, then you don't know really how to track it. If it's been done, has it now allowed more businesses or business individuals to come into the country or not? No, sometimes when these things are open-ended like that, you cannot really measure it. And somebody did say, if you cannot measure your yields or measure your output, then you can hardly appreciate where you're going to or where you're coming from. But I mean, let's end on this because you wanted to say something, Mr. Onasami?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that, to be fair to the Ministry of Interior, I think a significant improvement has been done in that aspect, trying to digitize a lot of this process, and I think there is already a timeline that was communicated, in one of the initiatives, to say that all this pipeline technology deployment, this is the time to put it out there and now let people start using them. I think there is already a product in the pipeline that the government is ready to deploy for this particular initiative. So we can only wait to see that.
Yeah, and then we can wait to see the percentage of improvements. That's what I meant by the target and the timeline. Exactly. In 6 months, we hope to have improved by 5%, by 6%. Then you're able to know if you have hit that target or not. But anyway, another interesting one is the CNG. Recently, the president made a pronouncement on CNG vehicles and all of that. I do know that the Nigeria Customs Service had to purchase 200 CNG-powered vehicles, costing about 12.5 billion. And I know when we're having that conversation where the president said it, the thing is, how many CNG vehicles do we have with the president, with the ministers, and the executive? Then we can now go, of course, to customs and some other ones. I guess that is what we would like to see before I would change my vehicle. I don't know about you, Mr. Onasami.
Okay, from a technical feasibility, I think there is no fear. I don't think there's any safety concern. With
but there are. We had. I don't know. You heard of the story some weeks back. About a gas-powered vehicle. Because you have the cylinder in the car. That was the scene, and that was a source of fear.
Yes. So those are isolated cases. Just like you also have cases of recalls, even with petrol automobiles. There are some manufacturing fails that will definitely happen. But technically, on technical feasibility, if all the technicality involved in developing a CNG bus or vehicle is put in place, I think the safety concern is not something that cannot be managed. I think this is a policy that we are already overdue for, and I think the government needs to be more pragmatic in the implementation of this, because this is something that the automotive industry in Nigeria has the capability to deliver on. And I want to strongly believe that customs will not be approaching foreign suppliers for this, but work with the stakeholders in the automotive industry in Nigeria to get these CNG buses available. We cannot be crying for dollars and still be spending dollars to acquire the CNG buses. So I want to hope that players within the automotive industry will collaborate with the necessary stakeholders at custom and other ministries and agencies of government going forward, because there is one of the major initiatives that going forward, ministries and MDAs are only going to be acquiring CNG buses going forward. So this is a good opportunity for businesses in the automotive space to strategically position themselves, demonstrate capability to deliver on this, and then deliver, so that we can limit the pressure on Forex.
Yeah, we certainly do hope to do that. Thank you so much, lead partner at Cardinal Professional Services, Mr. Emmanuel Onasami.
Thank you very much, Ine. It's always a good time with you. Bye.
Good to have you too. Bye-bye.